Hello everyone, this is Sijas from Coding with Sijas and welcome to a brand new video. This is the 12th video in the UI5 series. If this is the first video in the series you're watching, you can click this link to access the entire playlist. With that, you will know the journey of our development of your application in detail. Also, do consider subscribing to this channel for more content like this. Without any further delay, let's jump right now to our today's session. Today, we will be learning about grouping, filtering, and sorting. For that, we need to do some data setup and we'll quickly jump into it. So here you can see the code which we were working till now. So I have moved the previous session's code into a new folder in the archive folder. And I have pushed the code into the GitHub. You can find the link to the GitHub in the description. So since I mentioned that we are doing some sort of grouping, filtering and all, we need a huge data set. Right now, if you check our component, you can see that we have a small data set with only 3 items. And I don't think that will be a good candidate for us to do filtering and sorting, etc. So instead of this, what I'll be doing is I'll be creating a new folder with a file for data. Here I have a folder called data and I'll create a new file called data.json. So this is going to contain a set of data. To generate the data, I'll be using something called a JSON generator. So I'll bring the JSON generator over here. So you can see here, I'm using json-generator.com and I need 100 objects with ID, object ID, first name, last name, age, and score. The same structure which we have seen in the previous video. So with this, I'll generate the data. So here I have the data. I'll copy the JSON and I'll go back to my code and I'll paste it over here. Now this in place, we need to access this into our application. So for that, I'll go to manifest JSON and right under app, I'll create a new property called data sources. So here we will be providing different data sources. So first thing is a name for the data source. Let me call it table data. So it takes 2 things. One is the URI, which is the relative URL with respect to a component, /data, data.json. Now, what is the type of it? The type is nothing but it's a JSON. Right? Now let me go to the model section. Right adjacent to i18n, I'll create a new model called table, or let me call it employee model. Same here, we have to provide a type. The type is nothing but sap.ui.model.json.json model. And here I have to provide a data source. So I'll provide data source is the object which we have specified over here, which is table data. Now let's go to our fragment employee table. Here we are loading the data from the default model. So I'll just make it employee data. So if you see here, we have an employee model and we are looking for a property called data. And right now our data does not have it. So I'll go above and I'll start a new object whose key is data, which is this. And I'll come at the end and I'll close it. So I can format it. So I'll just do a format. So I have formatted it. Now I'll come back to my JSON model and everything looks fine here, employee model, and we are referring to the data property. Now let me serve this. I'll open it, go to web app, and I see I'm getting 100 of records and null over here, and no data is displaying, and I'll come back to it. So if you see here, we are pointing to employee model, but the binding we are doing with respect to default model. So we have to mention model name, and a property is first name, and similarly we have last name. So it's last name. So let me come here and refresh, and I see my first name and last name is appearing. Similarly, it's employee model and age, and similarly employee model score, and the same thing I need to pass it over the state as well. So with this, we have loaded our 100 records of data. Perfect. Now what we need is we have to do some sort of filtering and sorting just above the header toolbar. I'll bring a search field. Close it, come back, and we already have a search field here. You can see we have a search field. I'll hide the remaining two things. So in the view, we are seeing something called second view, and in the landing page we are referring to that. I'll remove the instance to it. I'll also delete this because in this demo we don't need it. I'll also remove the controller of it. Now we have a clean app with only our table and a search field. So what does search field do? So search field will take some input and we have to write some logic to it. So first thing, we have to go to employee table and we have to attach the relevant event. So what is the event? So I'll open the SDK over here. So UI5.com. API reference search field. So let's go to the events. We have two events. One is search and one is live change. So I'll use search event. Come here. I'll write search and I'll attach to an event handler called search employee. Copy. I'll come back to landing page and we have our controller here. So search employee function. Perfect. Now if you look at the search event, takes one parameter which will give us the query. So all I need to do is create a O event handler here and var sQuery, which is the item which employee would have typed or the user would have typed, dot get parameter. And what is the parameter? Query. So I get the query here and I'll put a debug point. I'll come here. I'll open the inspect element. I'll go to sources. I'll refresh. So here we have the search employee. I put a debug point here, or I don't need it because I already have a debugger. I can type something called Sijas and press enter. You can see we are hitting the debugger and that has the item what I've clicked. Now how to do a search? Simple. So to do a search, first we need to create something called a filter. So what I'll do is I'll create an array called a filter, which will be containing filters. So let me import filters. So filter comes from SAP/filter. UI slash model slash filter. You can also see that here, model dot filter. So we have the filter here. So, and I need one more item, which is filter operator. So I have that as well. And I'm importing both items over here, filter and filter operator. So what I'm trying to do is, so I'm searching for some item. So what user have typed, and if there is any name which is matching it, we show it. So for that, I'll create new filter based on first name. Keep first name filter operator dot contains. So you can go to the filter operator and see what are the enumerations. So you can see here, filter all any between contains. So anything which contains this one, what it contains SQuery. Then we have to match it. Similarly, it can also be a last name. So I give that also, last name. So we have the filter. Now we have to apply the filter on the table. So we need an instance of the table. So for that, O table equal to this dot get view by ID. What is the ID of the table? Let's go here. We don't have an ID, so let's give an ID. Let me call it employee table. Perfect. I come here. I go to employee table. And I have an instance of employee table. Let's see. We have made a lot of changes. So we have to see how does it look. Okay. Now go here and type Jerry. Okay, let me put a debug point. Jerry. So you see here, Jerry is coming here. We have a filter with two filter items. First name contains Jerry, last name contains Jerry. And if I go a little bit further, I'll also see that I got a table instance over here. We don't apply the filter directly on the table because that's the concept we have to apply on top of the binding. So we have to get the binding. So let me get the binding as O binding is equal to O table dot get binding of items. So once I get the binding, all I need to do is to call a method on top of O binding. So which is, let's see. So what binding we have done? We have done a list binding. So list binding. Obviously we have a list binding over here. The list binding takes a lot of methods, and one of the method is filter. So filter method takes two parameters. One is a filter or a filter array. So let's apply O binding dot filter, and let's pass this filter array to it. And let's see what happens. I'll close that. And let me put a debug point over here and type JER. So JER, I have query, I have the filters, table instance, also the binding instance, and applying filter on top of it. So what happens is, since I have two filter objects in this is not doing a OR operation. So to ensure that it is doing an OR operation, we will create a O filter instance, which is a new instance of filter, which takes a filter. So filters is a filter and is false. I'll show you the syntax of it. Again, let's go back to ui5.sap.com, go to API reference and type filter. And we have got many filters. We need model.filter. We have it. Now, among the different syntaxes, we have used this syntax to create independent filters. Now, finally, we need to combine multiple filters. So that is the syntax where you're using their filters and is true or false. Now, with this change, let me close this. Now, with this change, I have to ensure I am passing that. Okay, now est, I'll type est and click search. I'm here and release the breakpoint. Now you can see here it is matching est branch and est Livingston. So there is a bug which you can expect here is when you close this, I have squery which is empty and I'm returning everything which is matching empty, and this is coming up, but unnecessary we are passing an empty filter. So for this we will write some conditions, which is initially O filter is going to be null, and I'll only create an instance of filter when squery has some content in it. So squery dot length not equal to 0. I'll write this instance so that unnecessarily I'm not filtering. If there is nothing entered in my search box, then it is filtering with null, which should again return everything back. Search, release, no change. And you can see here, now I can type Miller. I'll get every object which is matching Miller. 1 second. I'll clear it. I'll come it over here. Search Miller. Okay. Wait a second. Yeah. So here a small bug that I'm not assigning this to anything. I'll come here and assign it, and we are done. Refresh. Miller, and we are good to go. So that's one Miller. I'll remove it and I should get everything back. Perfect. So that's how we will filter. You can create combination of multiple filters and write your own conditions so that you can do some kind of UI filtering. And let's now see how to do grouping and sorting. So for that, in the table toolbar, I need a button. So I'll add a button with icon. An icon is nothing but sap-icon settings. Perfect. We have a settings button here, but we don't want this to be here. We want to be here. So we will add a separator between that, and that's called a toolbar spacer. Simply by adding a toolbar spacer, I'll be able to separate two sections completely. Perfect. Now I have employees and I have a settings button. Okay. Now let me add a method press, and let me call it open settings. So what we do is We'll go back to landing page. Right below the search employee, we will create open settings. This is a function. Perfect. Now we have a function here. Now we need a dialog which is showing sort items and group items, and we have exactly that with us with a control called view settings dialog. So it's simply a control called view setting dialog. I'll add it. Yeah. So for that, I'll create a new fragment, new file. Let me call it as employee settings dot fragment dot xml. Perfect. Let me just copy an instance of fragment definition and I'll paste it. And I don't need any of this because I'm using view setting dialog. So view settings dialog. Let me just confirm view settings dialog, which is again coming at M control level. So we will be able to directly mention it. View settings dialog. Now we need to open that. So first thing, we'll check if that instance is present. So this dot employee settings, if it's not present, we will open the instance of the dialog. So this dot load fragment. Let's see the load fragment method from the controller. Controller. What controller? It's an MVC controller. So MVC dot controller. We have a method called load fragment, which takes name of the fragment, and you get the instance of fragment over here. So load fragment. All you need to do is mention the fragment name. The name is nothing but in dot Sijas dot UI5 dot app dot fragment dot employee settings. So once this fragment is loaded, we use the promise callback function for dialog. We get it, and we need to store it in the employee settings. Or do we? Let's not. So let's just add this as a dependent for our current view. So get view dot add dependent for dialog. And since it is a callback, you will not have the reference to the current controller. So we need to inject the reference using bind. And once this is done, all you need to do is you come back here and we need to store this in the employee settings and use this employee settings dot then function for dialog, and in this we just need to open it for dialog dot open. That will open the dialog. So let's see. Till this we have done. Perfect. We have the search, we have the button. One click of it, it should open. Let's see the error. We should have some errors. Maybe that we haven't added any content into a view setting dialog. That might be the error. You have the console over here. Let me clear it. And refresh. Sources. Let's put a debug point over here and a debug point over here. Maybe here. Click it. We come here. View setting dialog is unexpected. So we will go ahead. We'll create an instance of fragment. We are here. We get an instance of the dialog. We do an add dependent, get view dot add dependent. Once that is done, the next is over here where I am getting ODialog instance. Oh, I'm not getting an instance of ODialog. Let's go and fill that content. Let's add more data to it. View setting dialog. Go here. And I'll add some aggregation. I have sort items. So under sort items, I'll add a view setting item. So I have that here, view setting item. So a view setting item is nothing but it takes two things. One is text. Like any other core item, it takes two properties, that is key and text. So let me call it text first name, and the key is nothing but the f name or first name. So with this, let me just refresh this. Perfect. Here, breakpoint. We are over here, ODialog as an instance. We have saved it. Now we are here, sorry, saying that. So here again we are getting an error. So let's go and correct it. So we have the content with us and we don't want our app to be doing this. Let me just verify once again. Employee settings, load fragment. Employee settings. Let's verify that with the network. We'll see whether it is loading our fragment. So employee table, employee settings fragment is loaded with the view setting dialog with source settings. So let me just remove this part. Perfect. Now this is done. Okay. Now let me go back to my code and refresh this. I'm here and I hope everything is cool here. We come over here and we should get the instance of dialog and we are opening it. Perfect. Now we have a dialog for sort with sort order and first name. Okay. And let's add one more. Let's duplicate this. Let me call it last name. And we want to sort it based on age as well. So let me call it age. And my key is nothing but age. So being this much done, now view setting dialog. When you open a dialog, you can select items from here and click OK. And clicking on OK should actually apply it. So for that, and let's see the events. So we have an event called confirm, and we'll use it. And confirm, let's call apply settings. Perfect. So this is our method. We'll go to landing page. Since we have open settings, let's call apply settings. It should also take an O event instance. And once you call confirm, what do you get? You get a parameter of sort item, group item, filter item, etc. So first, let's write var sort item equal to O event dot get parameter sort item. So this will return me the sort item, and I should get the descending, or basically the sort descending. That also I can get from the parameter using sort descending flag. So these two I have got. Now, same as what we have seen above, we need an instance of table, we need an instance of binding, so we will add those both as well. And finally, we have to apply the sort. How do we do it? Just call binding dot sort, pass new instance of sorter. So where do we get the sorter from? Same as filter operator. It's under namespace SAP slash UI slash model slash sorter. Sorter. So we have the sorter instance, and we need to pass the sort item which we need and the sorting order. Perfect. Now let's see it live. How does it look? Now with this, you can see we have a different order of age. So I'll remove the breakpoints. I chose the dialog. I choose age, and I want it in the ascending order of age. I'll put a debug point here now. Click OK. I get a breakpoint. Now we see what is the sort item. Sort item is that one. So we have to get the key of the sort item, so which we will do in a while. But you got the point. So description, sort item, we have table instance, we have the binding instance, and we are directly passing the sort item, which is wrong. We have to pass the sort item dot get key. Now we'll go back. Fresh settings, age. Okay, we are here already, and let's release the breakpoint. So you can see now it is sorted in the ascending order of age. I can click this again back, click on descending, and click OK. It will be in the descending order of age. Yeah. Now I can select first name, click OK. Now it's the descending order of first name. I can click ascending, and anything with A should come first. So that's how the sorting works. Now let's add a group item. So for that, we will go back to employee settings, and we'll add a new aggregation. It's called group. group items. So for group items to work, we need something which is, common between the values. So let's go back to my JSON generator, and I'll add another property, which is going to be some sort of type. Okay, and we need a random value between student and teacher, or manager and employee, something like that. So let's see the help, and we need some random string among this. So I'll call a random method, which will take 2 parameters, and we'll call it employee and manager. Let's see when you generate what happens. So here you see we have got a data with employee and manager, and as we know, we need the structure as data, and closing it, generate. So this is what we need. I'll copy the clipboard. I'll go back to my data JSON. I'll replace the entire data with the new data. I'll come back here. I'll refresh. Now we have a new data set. Now let me go back to my employee settings, and I'll give a group item, which is, I'll group it based on the type, employee type. Okay, and let me call it type. So this is my second section for grouping. So I need to group all employees together and all managers together. So you see here, I get a non-grouped and employee type. So what if I have selected ascending and employee type, and I click OK? Basically nothing happens, because you see here and click OK. See that we have a breakpoint here, and there's no sort item, there's no sort description. Basically sort description is false, the table binding, but there is nothing to sort. So now what we need to get is, we need to get the group item. So let me go back to my controller, and similar to sort item, we have group item, which is again o event dot get parameter group item, and similar to sort descending, we have group descending. So let me get the group descending. Now let's have this simple trick of choosing between grouping and this one. So first thing what we need to see is, we have to create a simple instance of or sorter equal to null. That's the initial one. Now if we have a sort item, that is where our or sorter will be equal to this one, where I'm doing a simple sort. And if group item is the one which is available, then we need to do a grouping logic. So that time we will write or sorter equal to new sorter, and group item dot get key, and we need to pass the group description or group descending order, right? But how do you group it? So for that, we'll go back to sorter. So grouping is nothing but a different way of sorting it. So if I go to the instance of sorter and if I go to the here, the third parameter is nothing but the group, right? So here I just need to pass a true, which will ensure now this is grouped. And we are grouping based on something called type. And let me go to my data and just verify type. So property matches. So I save everything. I'll go back to my application and I'll refresh. Click this. We'll see the default thing is working. So we are here. So we are checking what we have. We have sort item and we have no group item. So next, go next. And this will hit the first if loop to create the sorter. We'll come back and we will do a sort. Perfect. So now we are having ascending order of age and descending order of age. I release a breakpoint. And that things works as smooth. Now next thing is grouping. I want to group based on employee. I click OK. So come here. See whether sorting item is available. Sorting item is also available. And grouping item is also available. So what we do is the grouping item gets priority. And we'll proceed with grouping. And you see here employee is there. I release a breakpoint and descending. I get all managers under one group. So that's how grouping also works. Now here if you see manager and this thing is in small letters, and if I want to change that, that is where we get a V group where we can, based on our value, we can configure the content. Now let's stop here. We have seen sorting, we have seen filtering, and we have seen grouping. I hope this is helpful. Please do try out all the training videos for understanding more about UI5 application. And this part is really important because when you are creating an application with lots of data, it is really important for you to implement filtering logic, sorting logic, as well as the grouping logic. So if this is the first video you're watching in this series, you can click this link to access the entire playlist. That way you will be able to learn everything from the starting. And if you have any questions, do post comment. If you like this video, give a like and subscribe this channel if you haven't already. Thank you guys. See you in the next video.